little thumb was part of a hand, and he was kind of the underdog, I guess, in the story, where, he was so little that nobody thought that he could accomplish great things.
These are the words of King David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, He leads me beside quiet waters, He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for You are with me. Your rod and Your staff, they comfort me. Prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
I had an assignment in high school to write about my personal hero. I knew who mine was, but lacked the motivation to fully explain why. Years later, when I realized how important that assignment was, I couldn't go back. It was too late.
The year was 1949. I just had turned 17 years old. And every Sunday afternoon, my girlfriend and I, we went to church. This little guy, he came in and I was kind of attracted to him. I thought he was cute.
I know my mother, her impression of him was he was a nice, sharp dresser and kind of a cute guy.
Afterwards, my light fixture on the bike didn't work. So I asked him if he would want to fix that for me. And he says, well, I can do that, but it will cost you. Then I said, well, what would you like? And he says, how about a kiss? And I looked at him and I kind of smiled and I said, well, I guess I can give you that.
I think she's seen it's a man and he's alive. And this is probably about one of the last ones that are around in town. I might as well take this one because there isn't very many left. But I think she got a good catch.
We were going together for about 3 years, and then Frank had bought me an engagement ring and we got engaged. So we made arrangements and we got married on my birthday.
And the pictures, I remember Oma had a beautiful dress, with a long veil and gorgeous flowers, and Dad was dressed in a tuxedo and almost like he had a top hat, But they didn't really smile in pictures like we do now in wedding pictures. Dad looked so stern, it was almost like he was at a funeral.
It wasn't long after we were married that we were expecting a baby. Jack was born the following June.
Yeah, when Chad asked me if I would go on the trip with him, at first I thought, wow, why would he want me to go? And it was an exciting possibility for me to do something like this, but I thought I probably never would have done it had I not been invited by him.
All right. Thank you.
Sweet.
When Chad first talked about doing this video, I thought, what kind of documentary can you make on my dad? I think Oprah really was high in Chad's eyes, and he saw him a lot different than most of us.
Baseball, and the fact that I knew all the players, and it was just some people play Nintendo, some kids race cars like my brother. I collected baseball cards and read the stats, and I was a baseball nerd. And then when they went on strike, I stopped collecting, I stopped watching baseball. I just gave it up cold turkey because I don't know, I just lost interest after that.
The magic was gone?
The magic was gone. Lou Whitaker, one of my heroes, went to one of the strike hearings in a limo and in a tux, and just like, what the hell are you doing? You're trying to say you want more money, you come as a pimp. Since moving out of my parents' home, my baseball cards have remained in their attic. After the strike, I had thoughts of selling them or giving them away. But for some reason, I never did. I know for a fact I have more. I have a box like this, that size. When I was brainstorming for this documentary, a childhood memory kept playing in my head concerning some of the first cards I ever collected. But it was so long ago, I can't remember if I still have them. Although not worth any money, they could be the cards that would redeem my collection. Guilt is a strong emotion that continually lingers. I didn't treat that assignment with the dignity that Opa deserved. I have felt this guilt ever since the day he died. I need that guilt to go away. And in the process, I want to help someone do the same.
I asked a few times Mom and Dad, why they came here from the Netherlands, what caused them to decide to come here.
One day, Frank and Pete, they were working for a butcher who was selling horse meat. They were getting paid, but they did not have to pay. Well, at least they thought they didn't have to pay taxes on it. Until one day, the neighborhood butcher found out about it, and he talked to the tax men, and they came and They took everything what they had, and they told them they had to pay a high fine. I got so mad that I said to Frank, I said, well, if you cannot do anything extra here, then you might as well immigrate. Because he had talked about immigrating.
And I think he's seen there was a lot more opportunity over here for hard work, and that's basically what he was. He was a very hard-working man.
In those years, America was looked at as the land of opportunity. And not only that, but a land that would accept and welcome immigrants.
If I was his age, with a wife, with a small child, and a baby on the way, I would be scared shitless. Excuse that language.
Kind of picture my dad being very quiet, scared, not really knowing, this is very unknown territory. And I think this was his way of seeing what the world was like.
$150 in my pocket, not knowing what waits for me on the other side of that ocean. I would be scared to death.
The journey across the Atlantic, I think was probably a very interesting one.
All these 10 days to be on the boat. And all these 10 days, I was sick.
Oma was pregnant with Uncle Nick, and that she was sicker than a dog.
Sicker than a dog.
The roll of the ocean and everything, she was probably chumming the waters every day. Did you get that part? Chumming the waters?
My dad enjoyed hanging out in the bar or whatever it was
And he had a great time.
and talking to the guys all day long. He had the time of his life.
Frankie was wandering the decks the whole time, hanging out with his buddies on the friends that he met.
And he had a great time.
He could talk to anybody and would talk to anybody and would talk and talk and talk to anybody because he didn't care who he was talking to. As long as they would talk back, he could strike up a conversation with anybody.
And it was such a great relief once when we saw Statue of Liberty.
It can't be easy to leave all your family behind and go out to start a new life somewhere totally different in a whole different country where you didn't even speak the language.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is our pleasure to welcome you to Amsterdam. Local time is approximately 8:40 a.m. For your continued safety and comfort, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened and all of your carry-on baggage stowed until we have parked at the gate and the captain has turned off the fasten seatbelt sign. Upon deploying the air, please check carefully for your personal belongings you have brought on board the aircraft with you. If you are making a connection here, please check the
We got here on May 5th. That was Dad's birthday. And I thought that was odd that the trip was planned like that. And Chad said he didn't do anything intentionally like that. It just happened that we got here on Dad's birthday. Hate them things. We got done going through customs and stuff like that.
Holy hell.
Chad says, let's go this way, so I followed him over around there, and then there comes John and Jessica with the little American flags that they had. And when we came together and I said hello to Jessica and shook hands with John, and I thought, I said to him, 50 years old and you're the first cousin that I've ever met from the Netherlands. We're driving over to John's house. I'm just looking around wondering, what life would have been like had we stayed here. How things might have been different. But everything happens for a reason, and there was a reason that we didn't stay here. But I think it's just natural. You wonder what it would have been like had you been brought up where you were born. We all went out in the backyard and we sat down and had coffee. Yeah, we met John's wife, Nanette, and his daughter, Anita, I don't know how to say it. Since we've been here, they do that like every day at 3 o'clock. It seems they have a tea break, which you thought they only did in England. So yeah, like I said, I thought it was weird to meet a cousin for the first time when you're 50 years old. And the fact that, we didn't have anything like that when we were growing up. When we were kids, we didn't have anybody else except for the family. Yeah, we had people that we called Pac and Beppa.
Well, Frank's aunt and uncle, especially his aunt, she said once to me, she says, I know I am not your mother, and I'm not trying to take your mother's place, but I want you to look at me as your mother. Know that you can come to me anytime you need to talk. And that goes for the children too. So the children start calling them Pac and Beppa.
But when we were together with that side of the family, I don't know if it felt like this to anybody else, but to me it was like we were outsiders. They're nice people and they treated us nice, but I always felt like I was an outsider still.
If we had stayed in the Netherlands, I would have known all my aunts and uncles and my cousins. And that is something that we really missed out on by moving here, was that we had no family. We had the 6 of us, and that's all we had. There was no one else to rely on. We had no grandparents.
In Dad's later years, he missed his mom and dad. He really, truly did. And you could almost see it in his eyes if ever we would talk about Pac and Beppa, that he missed them. And I think in a way, maybe when he had grandchildren, maybe that's when he missed them more, because I think then he saw too what we missed, not having grandparents around.
When I see children with their grandparents out for dinner and stuff, and how their grandparents are spoiling their grandchildren, and I get sometimes a little teary-eyed and jealous, that I never had that. And when I was younger, I didn't miss it, but now that I'm older and I see what I've missed, now it affects me a little bit.
We're going to go to see my Uncle Wybenga. He's my dad's oldest brother, who I've never met before, and his only brother that's left living. Yeah, my dad would talk about him once in a while. He was a teacher. He didn't have a whole lot of stories about him, I don't think, too much when we were growing up. I'd met his other brother, Pete, and his wife when they came over. I was kind of anxious, nervous to see him for the first time. Somebody I've never seen before. That was my dad's brother.
Hello.
Yes.
Hallo.
Ja.
Nee, we zullen even
to see him for the first time and just to look at him. You know, I just looked at him and almost started to cry when I gave him a hug and shook his hand for the first time. In fact, I did start to cry because he looked so much like Frank and he talked like him.
Mama Weber.
Yeah. I'm glad to meet you.
You too. He looks like Frank.
He looks at me and he says, "Yeah, you look so much like your father." And I sort of got choked up and didn't know what to say. And then to listen to him talk with him, and I was sitting in the chair crying, just listening, just watching and listening to him talk, because it was just like hearing Dad talk.
Hij was iemand die op zaterdagavond de stad in ging. En daar liet meneer zich eens een lekkere maaltijd eten. En dan was zijn avond weer goed geweest. Hij hield veel van gezelligheid. Ja. Hij is, dacht ik, bovengronds geweest. Op de mijn. Dus niet in de mijn, maar bovengronds. En het was een ondeugende vent. Want hij had nog een vriend. En dan gingen ze in een huisje zitten op dat terrein. En hadden ze erop geschreven wegens vakantie gesloten. Ja, wegens vakantie gesloten. Zo was die ook, hè. Ja.
To hear stories about the stuff that he did when he was younger. Because he didn't, he never really talked too much about the stuff that he did when he was younger, and if he did, maybe I just didn't listen good enough, because I don't really have a whole lot of memories of him telling me what life was like before he came to the United States.
Nou, dat was niet ver na de oorlog, hè. Toen trokken ze allemaal naar de States, ja.
Ja, maar waarom gingen zij wel en bijvoorbeeld ome Piet niet?
Ja, ome Piet. Wees anders, hè. Frank, die was, ja, had meer energie om het goed te krijgen, zeg maar. De eerste keer, toen hij op bezoek kwam, toen hebben we hem opgehaald op Schiphol. En het eerste wat hij zei, ik ben rijk. Ja.
Dat vond hij belangrijk.
Dat was Frank, hè? Ja.
You know, you could tell that everybody thought that Dad was special in his own way. You know, he might not have been the smartest one in the family, the one that would wound up to be a teacher or whatever, but he turned out pretty good, I think.
My sister and I, Mary, we had, Oma had to have neck surgery, and she was in the hospital for a good week, and we had to stay at her best friend's house, which was Tanta, we called her. The reason we had to stay there was because Dad did get up early for work, and there was nobody close by that could get us off to school. So the boys were older and they could kind of take care of themselves. So Mary and I spent 2 weeks at Tanta's house. But during the 2 weeks we were there, Easter came. And I remember, you know, Easter morning, Tanta had this big, beautiful Easter basket. One of the ones that when you went to the store, you just wished you could have, because it would be big, wrapped in cellophane and just have a lot of neat stuff in it. And that day Dad came over to visit, and he brought us a very simple Easter basket, almost like one he had to fill with the greens himself. And it touched me so that Dad took the time to go to the store and pick out these two Easter baskets. It's almost like you knew he had no idea what to get. To this day, You know, that simple little Easter basket meant so much to me, and it's just the thought that, you know, Dad had to do this himself. Like, the other one was nice, but it wasn't as special as this one that was picked personally for me from Dad.
One time he came home and he had no job. And he was very upset about it. So he went to the unemployment office and tried to find a job. So one day he came home and he says, well, I'm going to be selling Watkins products. I said, okay. But the thing was, he didn't speak very much English. So, but anyway, he left in the morning, and about 5 o'clock, he would come home. He didn't sell anything. The second day he went, and he came home, and he had sold for $10. And he says to me, I tried so hard. And he started to cry. And I said, why are you crying? He says, because I'm letting you all down. You know, I want to work, but I don't have any work. And I said, Frank, listen, you have to put your faith in the Lord and pray about it, and you will find something else. And sure enough, a week later, he had a job.
Hij is, toen de oorlog uitbrak, naar Friesland gegaan. En is onderduiker daar geweest. Maar wat deed Volkert? Hij ging het dorp in om eens een borreltje te drinken. En dat had hij nooit moeten doen. Want toen konden ze hem pakken, zeg maar. Toen waren daar een paar Duitsers. En het werd al gauw verkondigd natuurlijk. Het is die en die. En ze hebben hem gepakt. En is hij naar Duitsland gegaan. Daar heeft hij gevangen gezeten. En daar is hij vreselijk ziek geweest. Hij kreeg die diarree, weet je wel. En er waren mensen die dachten dat hij het nooit redden zou. Maar uiteindelijk is hij toch nog op zijn pootjes terechtgekomen en is bij ons teruggekomen. Ja.
En toen daarna kwamen de Joodse kinderen bij u in huis?
En we kregen Joodse kinderen. Ja, die waren al in de oorlog bij ons, hè. Ja. Van een week hebben we elkaar nog opgebeld uit België.
To meet the last part of the family, the original family, before he died.
Cheese. Opa, you have to smile. Zeg cheese, opa.
Opa, cheese.
Dat is opa's lach.
Opa, je moet lachen.
Oh, ik moet lachen.
Cheese. That's a good one.
Dan krijg je een mondje.
And to hear him talk about the stories that he told about Dad, it was very special. Yeah, when we left, I gave him a big hug. And he said how nice it was to finally meet me, and how nice it was that the family had met. I started to cry a little bit, just tearing up. I didn't want anybody to know that I was crying, but it's like going I don't know, it's like saying goodbye to my dad in a way. And it's like seeing him again. Still like he was still there in the room.
During the war, Frank's parents became involved in the underground, where Dutch people worked together trying to save as many Jews as they could. And since they lived close to the railroad, Frank's father just could cross the railroad yard and go to his house. So many times he would come home with almost a newborn baby, a Jewish baby, for his wife to take care of. And then it would be transported in a couple days to a family who would adopt these children or would take care of them. And then one day he came and brought home 2 boys. These boys, when they grew up, they named them as Mom and Dad to them. And they became Mom and Dad to them because both the boys' parents and brothers were all killed in Germany. And the oldest moved to Belgium. The other one went to Amsterdam. He was sick, I believe 62, and he got cancer and he died. So now there's only one Kinsbergen left, and that's Louis.
Mom was telling me that Chad wanted to find out as much as he could about what it would have been like in the war there, and somehow or another Louis' name got brought up. I didn't know too much about Louis and his brother, and I hadn't heard a whole lot about him when I was growing up, only until we decided we were going to go interview him on this trip did I really give him much thought. Mom called and talked to Louis' wife, and they said that they were going to be on vacation. So we took a drive. John was driving. We left from his house to go into Belgium, to where Louis and Sonia, that's Louis' wife, had like a summer cottage, I thought. It was right on the ocean in a place called Ipana. So he came downstairs to meet us. Little short, gray-haired guy. I don't know, when I first met him, I think I felt a little bit detached. So then we went up to his apartment and met his wife Sonia.
Met vrouw.
Dag.
Chad.
Hoe heet jij?
Chad.
Chad. Chad.
Chad.
Dag Jan.
Hi.
He looked like a little Jewish man, I guess. I don't know if there's such a thing, but when you saw him, he didn't look like a Hollander, for sure.
Dus wij waren zover dat ik bij Paken en Beppe aangekomen was.
In Sittard.
En dat ik daar als hele vreemdeling kwam bij Friese mensen die mij met liefde opgevangen hebben. Niemand kon ooit meer voor een mens betekenen als Paken en Meppe voor mij bijvoorbeeld betekend hebben. Paken wist de weg naar de ondergrondse en hij zorgde wel dat die dan weer bij de goede adressen kwamen. Soms ging dat wel mis, dan werden die opgepakt doordat ze fraaien werden, maar Paken en Beppe deden alles wat ze konden.
Dad was very proud of what his parents did during the war, in hiding Jews and helping them to get on the railroad and stuff.
I think that, all the stories that you've ever heard about the Holocaust and, the horrible things that happened to Jews and people that were helping the Jews, it amazes me that and it makes me very proud that my grandparents stood up for what was right, regardless of, consequences to them.
Wonder what that was like. You think of the Anne Franks and, man, my grandparents did this. They risked their lives, they risked their children's lives to hide these people.
I was pretty proud of my Oma, what her and my Opa did. I wish I would have known them better, I wish they'd still be alive right now, that I could tell them how proud I was of them when I found out.
After the war, and after Frank's father had passed on, the people who had taken in Jews and had worked for the underground, they received a medal.
When my grandma, or Beppa, was honored for hiding the Jews by the Israeli government, my dad was so proud.
And whoever would come to the house, he would say, "Look, this is what my mother got for taking care of the Jews."
There's not very many people that have that medal, but the Wybengas do.
Nou weet ik wel dat Pake en Beppe, dat kon ik natuurlijk als kind moeilijk begrijpen, dat drong niet tot mij door, ik was te jong daarvoor. Maar dat Pake en Beppe een groot verdriet hadden, en dat was Volkert. Volkert die zou op transport naar Duitsland moeten. Maar Pake en Beppe, zeker Pake, die hadden zo'n hekel aan de Duitsers, dat die liep met het gedacht, maar mijn zoon, die gaat niet naar Duitsland. Ik zal wel zorgen dat die beter terechtkomt. Dus, nu was Pake bij de spoorwegen en die wist dus precies wanneer dat al die treinen aankwamen. En die heeft toen Volkert naar de trein gebracht. Maar in plaats dat hij hem op de trein naar Duitsland gezet heeft, heb hij hem op de trein naar Friesland gezet. Want hij wist al die, hij kende de dienstregelingen omdat hij bij de spoorwegen werkte. En toen is Volkert dus op de trein naar Friesland gekomen. Ja, en daar is hij in Friesland bij mensen gekomen. Die heeft daar, op zijn Vlaams gezegd aan zijn plan moeten trekken. Pake dat gehoord dat Volkert daar verraden is geweest en opgepakt geworden en dus naar Dachau gevoerd is geworden.
Pake en Beppe waren bij ons op bezoek in België. En toen vertelde Pake aan ons, want we hadden het wel over de oorlog. En toen zei hij, toen Volkert terug is gekomen uit Dachau, hebben wij een hele nacht gepraat. En het was zo zwaar voor Volkert. En dat zal voor Pake natuurlijk net zo zwaar geweest zijn. Maar voor Volkert om dat allemaal weer terug te herbeleven en het helemaal weer voor je ogen te zien als je het vertelt, dan zie je het. Dat hij had gezegd toen hij uitgesproken was, ik heb het nou verteld en ik doe het nooit meer.
Dat hij zat in een kamp, dat was een heel gevaar, daar gingen veel mensen dood, die werden ook ziek allemaal, omdat door ontbering. Hij was niks, hij wochtte.
Maar hij was ziek.
Hij was ziek, ja, hij had
dysenterie.
Dysenterie, dus hij was nog heel mager, hij was uiteindelijk nog 40 kilo was hij.
35 kilo.
Bijna 40 kilo toen hij terugkwam van de oorlog.
And I can more easily understand why my dad never wanted to talk about what happened during the war. I mean, he would tell once one or two things, but mostly he said that he had it pretty easy through the war, but I think different after hearing Louis talk.
Ja, hier is the place you must be.
0. We zijn ook zo omhoog gekomen.
Goodbye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
I didn't think much about the visit before we went to see him, but after sitting with him and hearing him talk, it was something that you can never forget. It's important to me because when I was between 16 and 40, I just didn't give a shit. And I missed a whole lot of life that I could have had with my dad if I didn't if I thought more about other people instead of just thinking about myself all the time.
Oh, that was my favorite player growing up.
Who's that?
Matt Noakes. My first most expensive baseball card I bought for $1.25 was a Matt Noakes card. That's not it though.
Matt Noakes was your favorite baseball player?
Yeah.
What was so good about him?
Because whenever he was on TV and I watched, he hit a home run. It just worked out that way. The blast of the past.
Not that one?
No. One night when I was staying at my Opa and Oma's house, Opa came up to me and asked if I wanted to go for a ride. It wasn't uncommon that I would go out with him to the liquor store, and I would have to sit in the truck while he went in. Superstar cars, Lionel Richie. But on this one particular evening, we went from one liquor store to the next, and I was kind of wondering what was going on. Then he finally came out of one of them with 4 12-packs of Coke, which I found strange because Opa and Oma never drank Coke. After he loaded the cases, he put his hand in his pocket and pulled out 4 baseball cards. He smiled as he gave them to me, but I remember my first reaction was, these baseball cards will never be worth any money. Now I'm starting to get a little nervous.
When I was growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of friends, I didn't think. And like I said, I always felt on the outside, sometimes looking in. But as I got to be 16 years old and stuff like that, I started to drink. When I was 16, when I was 17, I was drinking and smoking pot. Between the ages of 17 and 44, I drank mucho. I did many drugs. And, some of the reasons are becoming clear to me now why I started doing that. But basically I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I have done so many drugs and drank so much over the years that there's a lot of stuff that I will never be able to recall again. So I think that I was my father's greatest joy and his greatest disappointment all rolled into one. You asked me about the stories about Dad. Well, the ones that I remember most are where I would have fallen flat on my face somewhere and he was always there to help pick me up. I had no appreciation for any of it until I until after he died, truthfully. Because right after he died is when I quit drinking and doing all that stuff. But there was times where when we were 17, 18 years old, we were breaking into houses, stealing stuff, doing all that kind of stuff that I should have been thrown in jail for. And he caught me at it one time. But through it all, he always gave me a second chance, and a second chance after that, and a second chance after that. And I always felt like I disappointed him for years. But he'd always tell me, well, maybe not at that time, but as I got older and got married and quit doing the crazy stuff, because I contacted hepatitis C during this big episode from sharing a needle with somebody, and I called and told him I was sick, and he got right in the car and drove down there and brought me home. And I was sick for 6 weeks, sleeping 18 hours a day in their basement. And my mom and my dad, they were always there to check on me and to make sure that everything was okay. And as soon as I got over being sick like that and all the care that they'd given me, it just didn't mean anything to me. I didn't have any appreciation. I went right back to doing what I was doing before. And one of my biggest regrets is that he never got to see me sober, like I have been for the last 7 years. He never got to see that. I was in such a fog when he died that I was there, but I wasn't really there. And I would just, after the funeral and stuff, I'd drink myself into a stupor and go to bed and listen to the tape of the funeral. Until that Sherry said that she had it. I had two choices: either quit drinking or lose her. And I finally made a good choice. And one of my biggest regrets is that he didn't get to see that.
I think he was about 18 when the Germans wanted him to serve their country, and he didn't want to do that. So he went to Friesland.
He was advised by his father to hide, I mean, you got one brother that's not going to go because he works in the mines. Well, that's going to benefit, the Germans. The other brother's a school teacher. Then you got my dad, who, I don't know what he was doing at that time.
One day, somebody came at the door and arrested him.
I asked him that, how was it that you got, arrested and brought to the concentration camp? And his blunt answer was that he didn't want to fight for the Germans in World War II.
He stood up to them, and he was punished for it.
Early in the morning, all these young men, they had to go to this factory, and they had to pick up bricks. And they had to carry them in front of them and stack them as high as they could.
This young man who reminded me of a student. Dad said he had glasses, and they were doing some work in the field, and I remember that Dad said that he fell and his glasses fell off him, and the Germans were really mad.
And all they did was kick him and nobody could come to his rescue because they would be beaten then too. And it made him very sad.
That they stepped on his glasses and how, Dad said that they couldn't really help him. And, it's really sad because that's the only story I really remember Dad ever sharing.
He probably didn't want to talk about that because I think it was so painful for him to bring that up.
I don't think he was sheltering us from it. I think he was sheltering himself from reliving it.
He was a very silent man. He would keep all these things to himself.
I think he wanted the story to be told, but I don't think he wanted people to, feel sorry for him.
It hurt him because I think my dad was compassionate about other humans, and I think that it hurt him to think that humans could be so cruel to other humans.
I think if I had seen people suffer, I can only compare it to like with the movies and stuff, what the concentration camp was like. And I think if it was me and I couldn't have done anything, I think that would be very difficult to live with that.
Whenever we asked him questions about being in the concentration camp, he would just say that he had it better than most. I don't really believe that I gave a whole lot of thought to what was going to happen when we got to Dachau until we actually got off the train, and then I sort of became, a little bit apprehensive to see what it was like to see what my dad went through.
Every Sunday afternoon after dinner, my dad would take a nap, and I would always go and take a nap with him. He had this thing where he would warm my feet in between his legs, so my feet would get all warm because they were always cold. one of my favorite parts about taking a nap, and probably why I took a nap, was that he could tell me his stories. And one of the stories that he would tell me was, he said, Klein Duimpie, which means little thumb. Little thumb was part of a hand, and he was kind of the underdog, I guess, in the story, where, you know, he was so little that nobody thought that he could accomplish great things. And the fingers of the hand were all his brothers and sisters, and they would find themselves in some kind of grave danger of whether, you know, they were going to freeze to death in the winter and starve to death. And they would all come to Little Thumb, and we all lived in this. Little Thumb and his brothers and sisters lived in a shoe. And, you know, they would come to him and say, you know, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? You know, we're going to starve. We're going to freeze to death, you know. And Little Thumb would be the comforter of these fingers. And he would say, no, I'm going to help you, you know. And the fingers, or the brothers and sisters, they would be like, well, how can you help us? You're too little. You can't help us. And Little Thumb's like, don't worry, you know, I'm gonna help you, you know, we're gonna be fine, you know. And so he would end up, you know, finding them warmth, or a warm place to stay. He would get them food, and, you know, he was like the hero, this Little Thumb.
I think he wished he could have done something. You know, I think he wished he could have changed something. I kind of think sometimes he wished he could have been the one that destroyed Hitler and put an end to it, saved the world. And everybody would have remembered him. God doesn't always do what we want. God does what he wants. And there's a saying that, you know, God does everything for a purpose.
You wonder how anybody could put up with the pain and suffering that those people did, and that Dad must have done too, and all the things that he must have seen. But to think that your father went through that kind of stuff and never said anything about it to any of us, what he had seen, you know, anything he did after that was fine with me, because I couldn't think of anything he could have done wrong after he survived that. Went to the United States and had a family and worked his ass off so we all would have a better life than what he did. The things that he endured so he could go on and have that was beyond belief to me that anybody could go through that. He grew in my eyes when we were there.
When I heard Dad had cancer, I guess deep down I didn't want to believe it.
I remember taking him to his first appointment, and it was horrible for him. And he came out and he's like, I can't do this.
He had to have the radiation. The doctor marked his stomach, and they did an upper GI, and they make him stand with his hands up in the air. And when he came home, he cried, and he said, Mom, I thought they were going to kill me. I can't do this no more. I said, Dad, you don't need to go there no more.
When Dad accepted the fact and said that he didn't want anything else done. I think what went through Dad's head was, you know what? I don't have long yet to live, and soon I'll be reunited with my mom and Dad. And I really believe that that's why it went so peaceful. He had asked us to take care of Mom, and he knew that we would. And he was okay with that. He knew that he could leave and she would be taken care of.
His last concern was me. Take care of Mom, he would say to the kids, and he would say, take care of Oma, to the grandkids. And to friends, he would say, take care of Tilly. At least that showed that I know he loved me, but he had a very hard time expressing his feelings.
I remember the day before he died that I shaved him so that he wouldn't have a hairy stubble face when he died. He always wanted to look good. His biggest saying to me all the time throughout my life was, you look like $1 million. And he always wanted to look like $1 million. So I always wanted to make sure that he was clean shaved when he passed away.
We had helped him, up to the bathroom and whatever, and I think my mom was cleaning him up, and he made some comment about, wow, I used to do this for you kids when you were little, and now here you are doing this for me. And we got him back to bed, and I told him I loved him, and he said, well, he's like, I hope that I was a good father to you. And I'm like, you were the best. And I said, I hope I was a good daughter to you. And he said, of course you were.
The last conversation I had with Dad was I was asking him where the family treasure was buried. He kind of laughed and told me, he goes, kid, I ain't got nothing. I was telling him what a good father he was for us. And I was so proud of him. I told him that I loved him.
And I remember him saying, asking where Chad was. Where's Chad?
When she says, well, Chad is going to go, he has to go to school. Yeah, but he says, I need to see him before he goes.
And I remember telling Chad, and I said, Chad, Opa wants to talk to you. And I know it was very difficult for Chad because for some reason it was almost like he was going really fast right before our eyes. Little did I know that, that was almost like the last words he said to anybody.
So that was Chad's goodbye to Opa.
His goodbye to Chad was a goodbye for all of us, but we didn't know it.
There's one.
Really?
There's one of them.
Whitaker.
It's the guy I told you in the thing. They went on strike, and he's the guy who came in a stretch limo and a tuxedo, and I hated the guy after that. And when they would play games, he would come up to bat, and everybody would be booing him. And I always asked my dad, I'm like, why are they booing him? They're at Detroit. He's like, no, they're not booing him. They're saying Lou, Lou. I never got that. Look at that. There it is. There's one of them. I'm so happy. Every time I went through my collection, I wondered whether to throw these baseball cards away. I always knew these cards' value would never appreciate. But every time I saw them, I remembered of the story of how I received them. And in my youth, thankfully, I was wise enough to recognize that. It just doesn't seem right. Holy moly, holy moly. Number 2. Was it Dwight Lowry? Don't know him, but I love him. I think these baseball cards represent Opa's desire to show how much he truly cared about me. There's 2 of them. That's awesome. And how easy it was for me to overlook what was in his heart until it was too late. The lack of the card's worth is the beauty of the gift. Yeah. Got 2 cards, and I don't know, like the first time I saw it, I was just, I've been looking forward to looking for these cards for like 8 months, 9 months. And when I finally saw that first one, I don't know, I was just so happy, so overwhelmed. And it's just so funny that such useless little things can mean so much. It's ironic how sometimes the most meaningful gifts I have ever received are the ones that take me the longest to fully appreciate.
I think Opa really was high in Chad's eyes, and he saw him a lot different than most of us. And he saw the heart in the man, and it's hard to say that anybody was great, but Chad thought his grandpa was great, and he had the vision to try to do this so that everyone could see what kind of man that he was. The first time we sat in the restaurant and talked, he asked me what attribute I think it was that I thought most of my father, and I think I said forgiveness. He forgave me for all the things that I put him throughout my whole life, and he loved me just as much even when I didn't care about anybody but me. Even then, he loved me more than anything. And I think forgiveness was his greatest attribute, because I certainly couldn't have forgiven some of the things I did. If I get anything out of this whole trip that we went on, would be that, I need to be more like my father. And everyone tells me, yeah, you're a lot like your dad, you look like him, you do this, you do that, you're quiet, you don't say anything. But I don't have that kind of forgiveness in my heart. I think that this can sort of complete a circle for me here. Just to see everything that we saw and go through everything that we did together. This could be the start of something, I think. I hope.
The day that my dad died was February 6th. And the day of his funeral was February 9. And that was my birthday. And I remember my mother asking me if that was going to bother me, having Dad's funeral on my birthday. And I said no, because the day I was born, I told my mom Dad was probably one of the first ones that held me. And the day that he died, I would be one of the last ones that held him. That's what I remembered.
He did not live a life without struggle. He did not live a life that was separated from failure. But in the end, at the end of the day, he put his hope in God. Now I know that this is a sad day. It's a hard day. And it's difficult for each one of you in your own unique way. But I want to hold before you the fact today that the faith, Tina, of your husband, the faith of children your father, the faith, grandchildren of your grandpa, his faith is sight today.
When my mom told me that Opa wanted to see me, I knew it would be for the last time. Part of me resisted not wanting to face the finality of the situation, but I knew I had to go. As I entered the room, Opa glanced up at me and smiled. He grabbed my hand and somehow gathered all the strength he had left for this one last conversation. He first asked me to take care of Oma, and then he told me to be a good boy. He then put his hand on my face and quietly told me that he loved me. And for the first time I understood how much love Opa had in his heart, and how his story reflected it. He had a love for his life, he had a love for his family, and even in the last moments of his life, he had a love for me.